Balance is a feeling derived from being whole and complete. It's a sense of harmony. It is essential to maintaining quality in life and work. Joshua Osenga.
Bending, Not Breaking. Season 2, Episode 20. The Crossroads of Destiny.
And we're back.
We are back.
It's the final episode.
The final episode. Is that what you're going for?
Max, I thought you were going to join in.
Not at this time.
We rehearsed this, Max.
We could do like a little barbershop chord. We got to find a fourth. If you would like to be in our barbershop quartet, tweet at us at bnb_pod. That's also our Instagram, or you can send us an email to thearchofe@gmail.com.
I'm into it.
All of those things work. We are in our last episode, and this is not a Tuesday.
Aren't barbershops closed?
So fun fact, I was a part of a barbershop chorus, and they sent out an email saying they are canceling events for like upwards of 2 years because singers are super spreaders, and there's no way to sing with like in groups or competitions safely, and so they're likely like just gonna not do it for like 2 years.
I'm hopeful that's not true. I'm hopeful, but yeah.
Singing brings so much joy to so many people, but yeah, your mouth is open and you are spitting and air is coming out frequently.
And on that note, my name's Ben Pruitt.
And I am Sunshine Mayfield, and we have with us our wonderful producer for this entirety of the season,
I love that.
Max Gongaware.
Gonga who?
Gonga what? Gonga Where's Waldo? Waldo being his middle name. So, anyways, this is a Friday. It's not a Tuesday.
What?
It's a Friday.
It's Friday?
It's the Friday.
I lost track of time.
That so many ATLA fans are excited about.
I know. That's so good.
Because today, if you haven't been to Netflix yet, there should be a little bit of a surprise for you of something that might be streaming starting today. And so that's why we wanted to do this episode today, our last episode of Season 2, because why not? Why not put this out on the day that Avatar: The Last Airbender hits the Netflix streaming waves in the United States? I think it's been on Netflix and other places.
It goes off and on elsewhere.
But it has not been on for our U.S. listeners, and that's why we're excited that that's happening today. And so this is what a perfect time to like go tell your friends to watch the show and then listen to each episode along the way.
Yeah.
Shameless
Twice.
plug.
Download it twice.
Shameless. Honestly, just click it, download it, and you really don't even have to listen if you don't want to.
I mean, I'd like you to listen.
We would love for you to do that. We would also love for you to go follow us on Spotify and to rate and review on Apple Podcasts.
I also wouldn't mind a little donation on Patreon. That, especially in this time of my unemployment, I would accept it.
Yes. Ben is not an essential worker,
Super
but an
unemployed.
essential person. So please donate to patreon.com/thearchofe. Let's talk about the Crossroads of Destiny, the final episode. And I got to tell you, I hate it. It's good, right? Like, it's not a bad episode.
I think it's really good.
But I hate it.
It's sad.
Ugh.
It's
so
tough.
much work.
It's so tough.
Down the drain.
I don't think it's down the drain.
It is really tough to assume the best in some of these moments.
I disagree.
I do my hardest, but I hate Azula. Hate. Anyways.
You do your hardest?
This episode has really wrecked my brain. I recently watched it to take notes, and I'm still in a state of just...
Yeah, I teared up.
I am being overwhelmed. I'm not whelmed, I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah, I teared up a bit.
Oh, I've teared up like 3 times. But before we talk about this episode at all, we have to do Max's uninformed recap.
The last one of the season.
Max, are you ready for your
ever.
prompts? Yeah, potentially. We've still gotten 0 feedback on this, so I have no idea whether or not listeners like it or not.
Y'all. You have to speak up.
It's fine.
Tell
All right.
us you hate it so I don't have to do it.
Or just on the opposite side of things, just even if you don't like it, just tell us you like it so Max has to keep doing it.
Unless you really don't like it, because then that would be counterintuitive.
Max, here are your prompts. The episode starts with Sokka and Aang flying back to Ba Sing Se to save Katara, and they see Toph on her way back to Ba Sing Se as well. She's doing like this little like earth skating thing. She's like bending the earth and like skating on it like it's ice. It's kind of cool. Anyways, number 2.
I'd say it's more like surfing.
She's doing like the speed skating motion. You know what I mean? She's not like riding it back.
Sledding? Skiing?
I'd say like cross-country skiing.
Cross-country skiing.
Yeah, so skiing. Okay. The end of the episode, Azula tells Zuko that he has restored his honor and the Earth Kingdom falls. Your words, your key words and phrases are coup.
Can you spell that?
Yeah, C-O-U-P, like a coup d'etat. 2 is ambush, generals, lightning, and dragon of the west.
I like how you enunciated.
Yes.
Max, are you ready?
Sure.
I will pull up the clock. You have 1 minute.
On your mark.
Get set. Go.
All right. Well, the episode begins with Sokka and Aang flying back to Ba Sing Se, where they see Toph doing some skate surfing, cross country skating on some ice.
He always takes like 15 seconds to do the first
Just
scene.
the first thing.
All right, continue. I'll give you that time back.
And on that ice, it's okay that Toph is skating across it because she's on her way to have a coup, which is short for coup d'etat. And as part of that coup, they ambush a bunch of generals. But good thing there's a lightning storm that keeps it from
20 seconds.
escalating any further. And anytime there's lightning, and of course in this universe is attractive to certain types of reptiles, particularly dragons of the
5
west.
seconds.
And then they restore honor and Earth Kingdom falls.
Yeah, that was well done, Max.
I know.
Ben, it's my turn, isn't it?
It sure is.
No. All right, give me 30 seconds.
Okay. You should have started.
Sokka and Aang fly back to Ba Sing Se and see Toph, and then Azula speaks to the Dai Li about a coup, and then Iroh has such joy about being the Earth King's personal guest, but then he gets ambushed, and him and Zuko have to fight their way out, and we see the Dragon of the West because he gets to breathe all over the Dai Li while they try to ambush him. And then there's a lot of fighting, but then Zuko, when faced with making the right decision on whether or not he goes with Uncle Iroh or Azula, he goes with Azula, and then everything happens. Aang gets hit by lightning, and Katara saves him at the very end, but the Ba Sing Se falls.
That was almost perfect.
I missed 1 or 2 things, but I feel pretty good about it.
I meant about your time, not really.
You forgot to tell us what coup was short for?
It's short for coup d'etat. I said that.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
But they are trying to overthrow the government of Ba Sing Se, Azula and the Dai Li, which is like the Secret Service.
Ba Sing Se is a place?
You're going to have to actively avoid Avatar on your Netflix now when you go stream. Like, are you not just going to be somewhat curious to watch like an episode?
I'm going to tell you something, Alex. I will not be curious.
You know, you like The Newsroom, you like The West Wing. Those are really well-written, excellent shows, right? You know, it's also a well-written, excellent show.
The Dragon Prince.
The Dragon Prince.
Avatar: The Last
Avatar:
Airbender.
The Last Airbender.
The West Wing doesn't have a dragon that I'm aware of.
Have you seen all of it?
I haven't, but
Well,
I heard season 7 really goes off the rails.
Yeah.
Yeah, it turns out Sam Seaborn's been doing magic the whole time.
Yeah, I love
We haven't seen Sam Seaborn in a while.
7.
Oh, is that a thing?
So right now we're talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender.
I'll do a West Wing podcast with you guys.
There's probably already one that exists.
There's probably multiple. Anyway.
That would be a shame if somebody already started a West Wing podcast. Surely this is the only Lavatar Bender podcast in the world. Right?
So, let's talk about this episode. Let's talk about balance, because we end our seasons with balance.
That's right.
Because it's important. It's what the whole show is about.
The show's about balance, right?
How you need Twee and La. How you need all the elements to come together to support each other.
Well, the fact that they're separated
is an illusion.
Right? Last episode.
All of them blend together and should be perfectly mixed. And
I just love that.
They're not.
We should just end it there. That was it.
That's it. That's the podcast.
Sweet.
Max, go home. All right.
No. Stay. We need you.
So we'll talk about this because really, as I'm going through this, it's tough to find moments of balance, but it's because I feel like there are so many moments of imbalance that create this tension that really this feels like the peak of, almost like the peak of the series, where it's really just set up to go into book 3, right? Like all this conflict arises and very little of it is solved.
Yeah, this is the messy middle, right? This is the mess, right? In order to get through to
it's the 2 towers.
I love the 2 towers.
I do as well. I think book 2's great, and some would argue that it's the worst book out of the 3.
Yeah. Well, and I think they argue that because it's uncomfortable, right? There's a lot of discomfort in season 2
that you got to sit with.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's ultimately what makes the series so excellent.
What pays off in the 3rd season because of all the feels that you have afterwards.
And so but here's the catch: you have to go through the messy middle in order to experience the joy and love that happens in season 3, and the redemption that happens in season 3.
Yeah, you can't have Zuko's redemption arc without
this moment, right? And so, like, let's dive in right there. Let's go straight to it. So we see the moment Zuko chooses.
Yeah,
we see it, and we see it on his face, and that crossroad, as the episode suggests, is so intense, and it makes me think about the story of the 2 wolves. You remember that story?
Whichever one you feed.
Exactly. So there's a story of these 2 wolves that are inside you, and they talk about how which one the boy's like, which one survives, and it's whichever one you feed, and one is an angry wolf, and one of the nice
fear, and anger.
and the other one is joy, light, and all that jazz. But we've seen Zuko continuously feed his angrier side. We've seen him feed this vengeance, we've seen him feed this anger towards Azula, his anger at his situation. And because that wolf is stronger in this moment where he has to make a values-based decision, he's going to go with the one that's stronger, right?
Yeah.
And in order for us to be able to make decisions well, we have to have balance within ourselves, right? We have to be able to say, okay, in which moment is this going to serve me most, right? Because there are times when experiencing anger is okay.
Oh, absolutely.
And there are times when experiencing sadness and grief and all the negative, quote, emotions, right?
Well, I think that's, I can't remember how long ago this was, or if it was a conversation with you or someone else, but the ability of saying that emotions by themselves are not negative or positive. They just are. And you have to experience them because those emotions are there for a reason. And what makes them negative is the context that people throw onto those situations.
Well, I think the conversation you're alluding to is a lot of times we ask, well, how are you doing today? And
bad.
People respond either good or bad, right? And what that inherently does is attach a judgment to what we're feeling, rather than saying, hey, what are you feeling right now?
Mm-hmm.
Can you name what you're feeling right now? So, hey, what are you feeling right now? And like, oh, that completely changes the game on how you answer that question. And so if it's one of those things where when we feed our perception in that way, right? If we are continuously valuing how we feel, we're naturally going to assume that sadness, grief, anger are bad.
Mm-hmm.
But really, as you're alluding to, they just are. They're things that we naturally experience because it's a reaction of our body responding to the stimulus that occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can just acknowledge it as that means it's a completely different world out there. And anyway, like Zuko has been feeding this negative wolf
for so long,
and it makes sense that that's the one that he chooses because
he's been feeding it the longest.
Well, and in moments where it is like integrity, as Brene Brown describes it, I think we've talked about her, is choosing what is right over what is fun, fast, or easy.
Correct.
Choosing courage over comfort. And I think Zuko has been living in the darkness so long that it's become more comfortable than living in the light.
Well, I think what also doesn't help is how Azula is feeding that wolf inside of him as well.
She's like actively feeding it.
And it's like Iroh's sitting there and being like, you don't need this, and like, we can do better. And she's just like, meat, feed the wolf. More, she's intentionally using her words to just drive a wedge and, I'll give you all of these things. Yeah. You'll have all of this stuff, which Iroh's saying, like, you don't need. This kind of goes back to, like, the earthly,
letting go of attachment.
Letting go of attachment, right? Because he is attached to this feeling of, I need to feel love from my father.
Yeah.
I need to have my honor. This is where I'm supposed to be. As opposed to, if you were just cool with not having those things, how better your life would be and how easier you would be able to love yourself and to love others.
But again, acknowledging that it's not that simple.
It's
not. And you have to let go of the fear.
You can't just
go guilt,
through. You can't just
shame.
open your chakra and burp, right? Like,
yeah.
It's not that simple.
That's right. There's no banana onion juice that's going to save you here.
Correct. And so it just makes it so hard. And then you get that, I think even makes it harder is you have that moment where Katara almost saves him.
That moment's so real.
Right, and we're happy she doesn't, because if she would have used that water then, she wouldn't have had it to save Aang later.
But if she had done it, would she have needed to?
Correct. Like, you put a reasonable time on the front end, you might not need to take an unreasonable amount of time on the back end.
Exactly.
And so, if she had the chance to do that... so they have this moment, they bond over their lost mothers.
It plays, it's if you go into before that, because I think we have to, last episode, Zuko wakes up from this fever, and he wakes up anew, right? And I think part of our body keeps the score, right?
That's a book.
That's a book, right? Our body keeps the score, and the fact that...
Max, you got something to say about that?
Do not do it. I know what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. Don't do it.
Okay.
I want to know what he was going to do.
He was going to say, let the body hit this. Keep this.
He's right.
Anyway, there's a book.
Body keeps the score.
But
we've had that moment on this podcast.
We've already had the moment.
I know, but I like it. It's a fun moment for me.
It's so distracting. Anyway, I've been sidetracked.
Well, then I might as well do it. Let the bodies keep the score. Let the bodies keep the score. Let the bodies keep the score.
Okay.
The body keeps the score. So Zuko and Katara.
Body is keeping this. Zuko fever wakes up happy, but the body like he needed to have a bodily experience to bring him back.
Correct.
Right? And so when he wakes up, he's happy, he's joyful even, which is not something I would ever describe him as until this moment.
It's the first time you feel like he's genuinely
it seems
happy
fake.
with the world around him.
Is this
it
real?
It almost does, but then
right?
You get the way he looks at Iroh in this episode when Iroh talks about
right?
Hey, look, we started from the bottom, now we're here, right?
Yeah.
He has that moment, and he's just like, I was attacking the city at one point, and how cool is it now that I actually get to serve the King T? And he's so genuinely excited about that. As a guy who's experienced so many things in life, that's something that's going to bring him pure joy, and then he gets robbed of that.
Well, and so that's my point,
and
right?
Zuko looks on lovingly and is all in, it feels like, in that moment.
Well, I would argue that he's his most vulnerable in this moment because he's acknowledging life and humanity and being himself.
He forebodes joy.
Absolutely.
Majority of the season. And I don't know if that's something we've mentioned before, what the concept of foreboding joy is, but that constant feeling of waiting for the other shoe to drop, and so you're not able to experience the joy in the moments that you're actually participating in that moment. Because you're constantly waiting for, when is the bad thing going to happen?
And we see Zuko do this as soon as he,
that date?
the date is a great example. Like when Azula's like, hey, you're gonna be welcome home in the first season, and then it turns out to be a trick, and we see like, I don't trust it, and like he doesn't trust it for good reason, but it's like he didn't just.
That's the second season.
Was it second season?
Yeah.
Pirates.
We don't introduce her till the very end of the first season.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Moral of the story is he's vulnerable.
Yeah.
And then because he takes that moment and he gets hit here, it's going to be harder for him to bounce back next time. And you're going to see him in season 3 be in the depths
grapple
of
with all of that.
Yeah.
So it's a really tough moment. It's tough on so many levels. You feel like he let Iroh down, and we get moments next season where it is real tough when you see Iroh and Zuko's relationship.
Well, and you see the balance here, right? And so the balance has been shifted, right?
So it's an imbalance at this point.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the visual for that is they were in harmony before. They were working together. They were loving towards one another. And then this imbalance manifests as Zuko looks at his uncle, and his uncle is unable to look him in the eye. He looks away.
We've talked about those moments of trust when you're putting marbles in the jar.
Oh, yeah.
And so the story for this, we've probably said it before, you're constantly putting marbles in a jar, and they represent trust. The more marbles you have in the jar, the more trust there is. But you have to put them in at a rate that is faster than what they are falling out because there is a hole in the bottom of the jar. So you are trying to put marbles into the jar faster than they are coming out to build trust with individuals. What we see here is a moment where Zuko shatters the jar.
Yeah.
There's no more putting marbles in the jar after this because he broke the jar.
Yeah.
And that is so hard to watch because you know that when Iroh goes to ask Aang for help and ask Toph for help, I love this moment. You have Toph that knows Iroh as the stranger who helped her. It's the stranger that they fought Azula with, and she sees him here and goes, I know this guy, he's a good person. Aang has his perception, Sokka has his perceptions, but you get this moment where Iroh says, I know he's a good person. I know he can make the right decision, and we have to help him.
So,
and then he doesn't
this
make
moment
the right decision.
This moment is pivotal, and we've already talked about it for a while. But like this moment is the foundation for Zuko's redemption.
Yes,
it is the foundation, and I'm gonna say something a little controversial here, I think, but like when we think about betrayals, when we think about devastating events caused by individuals, as the foundation, if we look at it through a lens of this is the foundation of their redemption, it really alters the concept of like, is this unredeemable? And so it's one of those things where, one, I am really feeling compelled to question the concept of something being unredeemable. And that's big. That's really big.
Yeah.
But I've been doing a lot of reading and listening recently on this, like the idea, like, you know, specifically the concept of like resurrection, right? And it's been Easter. There's a lot of biblical connotation to that, which give it or take it or leave it. But also thinking about resurrection in the terms of like, if something is dead, it coming back to life. And there have been so many things that have been considered that way that you would never have imagined coming back to life. I heard a podcast by Nadia Bolz-Weber talking about how this man was a drug addict. He was so in the depths of his disease that he got a girl pregnant. He was so ashamed of that, he left her with nothing, and then 13 years later has gone through AA, is making like coming back to like figuring it out. He's no longer doing drug deals. He's like quote model citizen, and he's still in AA. And one of the steps is making amends.
Yep.
He calls her, makes amends, and she's like, "I don't want to talk to you." But they have a child together, and so he calls and just says, "Hey, I'm sorry." And then they start to say, "Okay, I don't forgive you, but you can, you can call me once a month to talk to me and talk to your daughter. And then it becomes once a week. And then it becomes often. And then they end up getting married because he's able to start building up that trust again after so long, right? And so the moral here is that, like, what's unredeemable, and what do you, like, these things that we imagine as dead, right? That imagine as
you're dead to me, right?
As you're dead to me. This betrayal is too much. Like, then giving people the option to redeem themselves and giving people the chance, and that's dangerous. I see the danger in that.
It's tough. And for me, I still think there are things I say. If you are in your right mind, or not, even if you are relatively close to, there are some things that if you make a conscious decision to do it, I still very much think that are unredeemable.
Yeah.
That I think I don't know if there would ever be a forgiveness to that, or maybe a forgiveness, but definitely not a forget type of situation.
Well, I think that's the difference.
Right.
Is I don't think she forgot his
Correct.
past.
Sure.
I think that she forgave his past. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really compelling difference, because I don't think that we see Zuko, they don't forget Zuko's past.
No.
Right? It takes them a lot to move through that, but he takes the necessary steps to redeem that and to move through it. And we're not there yet.
No.
We're discussing things that aren't there.
But there's a lack of balance, right? Like, it is not a balance between
Correct.
Zuko battling between shame, joy, grief, all these things. It is full on.
So my
one
point,
side of
if I
that.
bring it back to balance, my point is that no matter how tilted the scale is, I wonder if there is always a way to bring it back. And I'll end there. I wonder.
And maybe not. I think that's tough because, again, I think I can think of specific situations where it would be incredibly hard to find a redeemable arc for someone on some things. Not all things, but some things. One of the other moments for balance for me through this is, as the coup's going on, the balance of power shifting to the Dai Li and Azula as the generals get taken, as the king gets taken, this definite shift. And so what we're seeing again is this lack of balance. It's not a checks and balances system that keeps everyone in check. It is this shift to one group of people controlling all of the power, and how quickly that society falls because of that.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, a lot of this episode is the lack of balance, and because that's creating the tension, that's creating the conflict, this shift into one person or one group controlling everything, and what that does, it acts as a detriment to the people who are in that community. So,
well, the arc here is we see Sokka discover this method to get to the Fire Nation, and then we see the balance, the scale is starting to go in their favor, and then Azula figures it out, and we see the scale tip again towards the Fire Nation. So it looks like we're climbing out, we're becoming more and more balanced.
There's more hope, and slam
then
shut.
It's taken away, right? That weight is taken off the scale. Azula is just a really good balancing act.
Well, and we see
especially Ty Lee with her.
Ty Lee definitely is, but then we see, again, as we go and look, Avatar, Aang goes into the Avatar state, gets knocked out of it real quick.
That's right.
And there's a huge lack of balance now within him, and everything that he kind of has to go through to get back to where he was, and it will be a long journey for him. But again, we're at the peak of watching this balancing act shift. We are not yet getting to the moments where, all right, how are we making this a more even keeled? We are in the midst of it. It is.
This might be our lowest
dab
point,
in the middle
right?
of
this
it.
Is this is where the balance is at most at risk, right?
Yeah.
On a different note, I just thinking about Iroh. I think wisdom. There's a lot of wisdom in him, but one of the things he does to demonstrate that is by his willingness to go and seek out Aang and party for help.
You mean the willingness of a master
to
still ask for help
yes,
when he needs
absolutely.
it. Which I think that just only highlights what we were talking about kind of last episode of this. If you are a master and if you have developed your awareness and you've done your studying, you only see more opportunities for you to learn more and to get help from others even more.
Yeah.
Because other people would have said, I don't need a 12-year-old's help.
Well, and I think that his ability, I just think he has the ability to see when things are out of balance. And I think that's what wisdom is, in a way, is being able to notice what's out of balance and then doing what you need to do to restore balance. And thank goodness the Avatar has all of his past or her past lives to figure that out and lean on.
Well, there's a moment for me where we do get a little bit of balance, and it's that moment where Katara starts to help and empathize with Zuko after learning more about him, because she's shifted into the power. You're terrible. You're the wrong person. This is all your fault. I'm going to scream at you. How dare you? Learns more about him. We see that scale start to level out as she continues to learn about him, and there's similarities, right? People are hard to hate close up.
And we got to that moment, and like people, like it's, and then he gave her a reason to hate him, right?
Which is so tough because she's in this point where now she's willing to help him.
Yeah.
And the connection and love and belonging that could have brought to the table.
The trust jar was broken for her, too.
Yep. In that moment. The moment that he, because she's got Azula. She's outbended Azula at this point. And the only reason Azula gets away is because Zuko intervenes.
That's right.
And then it's a battle between the two of them now. So, it's tough.
Tips the scale.
It's a lot of fighting in this episode, so it's not super content heavy, but we get those key moments. And I think the Katara Zuko one's a key one. I think Iroh asking for help is a key one. Talking about letting go of attachments, May with the bear, when the Ty Lee gets earthbended and taken, and then May's just like, just take the bear.
Oh, she's super good at letting
She does not care. And that's just a simple moment that's like chuckle-worthy. But like Toph doesn't play, like Toph and Sokka, they don't play major roles.
Not in this episode.
They just get captured. She does show them that she can metal bend, which is like,
yeah,
y'all, this is a thing. And I mean, massively in the canon of Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra, like metal bending becomes incredibly important in the future.
Yep.
But yeah, other than that, lots of fighting in this episode, and the Avatar getting hit by lightning.
Yeah.
And that's where we end it. The kingdom has fallen, and Avatar, we don't know what's happened with the Avatar state at this point, because we saw the Avatar state fall away.
Yeah.
So we don't know, but we see a little glimpse of it come back.
Yeah, that's true.
When Katara heals him, but we don't know what that looks like. So, next season,
it's big.
Whole new set of lenses for us to dive into.
Yep.
Whole new series of things to unpack.
Yeah, but before that, we got to have our devotion, and we got to have our next segment, which y'all haven't named yet, so we're ready to hear a really fun name.
But before we get to that, before we take our break, Max, you got anything you want to add?
Not at this time.
All right, we'll be right back, and then we will go through our new segment and wrap it up with the devotion. We'll see you in a bit.
And we're back with our segment that y'all haven't named yet. We want to hear from you what to call it. We're doing a random line from the text, and we're going to analyze it on 4 levels. And it's all about Avatar and how this one sentence is going to help us learn more about the Avatar world and all about ourselves. And it's just going to be really cool. So step 1 is what is happening on a literal level with the sentence. And so I got to choose it this week. And
Hit me
so
with it,
I
the
chose
sentence.
this sentence.
Not physically.
I betrayed Uncle. I betrayed Uncle.
Mm-hmm.
You remember where this is?
Not specifically. I assume he's talking to Azula.
Yeah, so this is at the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right at the end where he's looking his uncle in the eye and says, I betrayed Uncle. And she's like, oh, no, you didn't. He's the betrayer.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's the treasonous one. Yeah.
And then he looks him in the eye and Ira looks away.
Oof.
I betrayed Uncle. So That's what's literally happening. We're in this moment at the end of the episode, and Zuko is realizing what he's just done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're looking at this now the entire season or like series.
Yeah. So step 2 is let's look at this sentence now, and what does this sentence remind you of throughout the entire series? I betrayed Uncle.
It just makes me think of everything that Uncle Iroh has done from day one. And
Just the buildup of positive things that he's been
non-stop
laying
teaching
on
him
to
how to
Zuko.
lightning bend, teaching him how to be a better person, talking to him about being caring and being patient and taking time and trusting others and the White Lotus and all this other stuff that's happening. And I almost hear when he says, I betrayed Uncle, it's not just that moment, but he's betraying all of those moments where he spent so much time and effort to put forth love and compassion to Zuko.
It reminds me of like the moments where Zuko like walked away from Uncle, but Uncle wasn't crossing the line. It was when he took the ostrich horse and said, I need to go on my own.
The Chocobo.
Yeah. Or there are several moments, right, where he does that, and it just becomes harder and harder for him, and then he does it in this moment, and I think what we see is immediate regret.
Well, it's a little glimmer of hope, because the moments that it reminds me of also is the moments where Aang feels guilt over accidentally hurting Katara.
Ooh, I like that.
Over not being able to save Monkey Yatso. Over all of these moments.
That's interesting.
And we know we love Aang when he feels those things, because it means that there's still caring, there's still empathy there.
Well, we've also said how like humble Aang is, because he's so willing to admit his mistakes.
Yep.
And this is really the first time we've seen Zuko see his own mistake. And it's self-awareness. We talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
It's like this is the moment where he becomes aware.
And Azula's right there to like, no, you don't need to think about that.
Yeah.
I dislike her so much.
Yep.
She's such a good villain. But I think that's what it reminds me. She's redeemable.
Mm-hmm. Some would say no. But
don't we get moments of that throughout the book 3?
Book 3, we start to see her humanity a little bit.
Yeah.
We also see her go off the deep end a little bit.
That's also true. But there's also comics and stuff like that where I think that some of that humanity comes back as well.
Yeah. But let's bring it back to the sentence. So, I betrayed Uncle.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that reminds you of in this sentence or this series, really, where you sense this betrayal? And I'm not really into Legend of Korra, but there are a lot of betrayals that happen.
Oh, yeah. No, really the biggest push to me is the connection with Aang and when he feels guilt, and how we've even talked about guilt being there's no positive and negative emotions, but guilt can be a tool that you really can learn from and can help shape you in a positive way.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing that right here, and that just like we've seen that shape Aang, just like we've seen him feel those things and learn from those moments, and navigating that emotion. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, that's what's coming to mind right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I might be out. I might be tapped out. Cool.
Yeah.
So step 3?
Step 3.
So step 3, to remind our listeners, is what does this remind us of allegorically? So in other works of fiction, nonfiction, our lives, what does it remind you of? I'm gonna be real. Like the first thing I thought it was a monkey's uncle, and like that's just the phrase, just because uncle, it just makes me think of that.
Mm-hmm.
Uncles are typically like I think of uncles in a lot of like shows and things like that, where they're typically the funny comic relief character.
Mm-hmm. Uncle Jesse.
Yeah.
In Full House.
Exactly.
The guy who mooched off his single brother who was taking care of 3 kids, and he stayed rent-free in the attic.
Yeah.
Well, being a nightclub owner and not, contributing to the family at all.
Yep. Uncle?
I didn't
Max?
love Full House.
Uncle
Was
references?
that not Joey?
Uncle
Joey also lived in the house. Yeah. Jesse was the one that like lived in the attic and then forced his wife and kids to then also move into the attic with him.
Do you have any uncle references?
Don't you like say uncle when somebody's beating you up?
Interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
It made me think not so much the uncle, but the feeling of I'm not upset, I'm just disappointed.
Ooh, I hate that.
And I think that's Iroh doesn't lash out, man. That like him turning on you, I think says it all. When someone who is so compassionate and caring and is willing to extend the most generous assumption so frequently is finally kind of says like that's enough.
Yeah.
It's like and it just makes me think of those times where like you did something wrong and your parents are not mad, they're just so disappointed that anger's not the emotion they feel. It's
that reminds me of hitting rock bottom.
Right.
Like you can't ascend until you've hit rock bottom, according to Alcoholics Anonymous. And so like this is rock bottom for Zuko. He betrayed the one person who's been the most loving and caring towards him, and he's crossed the line. And like Iroh has set that boundary, and he's saying, "Nope, not doing it anymore." And that, for Zuko, what we will see is rock bottom.
Yeah.
Right.
Ugh.
But yeah, I think about the times in my life where I have betrayed the people, and sometimes it's knowingly not realizing how much of an impact it's going to make. And I also think about, like, if I pause there, like there are times when I've made decisions that have betrayed the trust of a friend that in the moment I knew and felt in my gut was going to do that, but I don't think I knew how much it was going to make an impact.
Sometimes you're in an argument with someone and you know you shouldn't say the thing you're about to say, but you want it to hurt in that moment for whatever reason, and you say it anyways.
Well, and the people we love are the people we are most able to do that with.
Because we know what's going to hurt the most.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why the siblings relationship amongst siblings is so difficult. Like, Azula knows how to goad Zuko. She knows exactly what to say to push his buttons. And being one of 7, I have 6 siblings. Y'all, siblings know exactly what to say.
Yeah.
I'll tell a somewhat mortifying story. My sister is one of the most incredible people. But when I was like 13 years old, she's several years older than me. She was in college or either just out of college and working through life. And like there was some body image issues. And she woke up from a nap, came downstairs and started eating a snack. And what I said without really even thinking about it was, she wakes up and the first thing she does is eats. And like I immediately felt regret. And like I was like, oh my God, I betrayed Alice. But like what happened there is like I felt immediate remorse, but that doesn't stop the fact that I said it. It doesn't stop the fact that she started crying. It doesn't stop the fact that like it happened. And I am now aware and very aware of what's coming out of my mouth. And I haven't said anything like that since, but I did it. And I made that mistake. And I know that people say things without meaning it or without like realizing what that will accomplish by saying it.
I've had a very similar moment with a good friend of mine when we went to go eat ice cream, and she's like, I'm going to get a large. And I was like, are you? Do you need that? And I was saying it as a joke, but it was not funny. And it was a moment that hurt. And it was a moment that she felt, and one that she still vividly remembers. And that sucks because that's not how I want that relationship to be remembered.
Yeah.
That is not the moment that I want. And I don't think that's the only memory she has. Like, we're good friends. But she still remembers it. Like, it's still, and that was almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think it's hard, and we say those things and we know what's going to push buttons, and I think that's what kind of reminds us of this, because the people you love the most it makes that betrayal feel that much worse.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it too.
Okay, let's move on to step 4 now.
Was that not step 4?
No,
oh,
God,
man.
we haven't even gotten to step 4. We got man, and what it feels like is we're climbing down into the show on a deeper and deeper level, which is what's really cool about this. But so level 4 is step 4 is what is this text calling us to do? Or if you were to teach a lesson on this, what would it be?
And that's so tough because you can't just say like, I'm not going to betray people. Like that's not the, yeah, you don't want to do that. And that's not a real tangible thing or helpful thing to kind of focus on. I think for me, it makes me feel called to not shatter the jar. It makes me feel called to really be self-aware about the actions that I'm choosing to do and the behaviors that I'm putting forward, and really think about the context of how they are used. There's a really simple devotional piece that we use with kids around toothpaste. And you have them squirt toothpaste out, and then you try to get them to put it back into the tube. And it's really elementary, right? It's really easy to say, like, you can't put it back in the tube. So just like your words, you say your words, you can't take them back. But how true that even really is outside of being an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, how true that really is when you say certain things that are meant to gut someone, that it's done, that the jar is shattered, and there's no coming back from that. And I think that that's really tough. And it goes back to everything we learned in kindergarten, and how it's just
wonderful book.
More complex forms of that. Share, treat people right, look both ways when you're crossing the street, put everything back where you found it, take care of other people, be caring, and don't say things that are hurtful. And as adults, we lose sight of that, and we say things that are hurtful, that we can't take back, that have been said, that shatter the trust. And I think I just feel called to try to be as self-aware as possible as that. But that requires me to have an understanding of the moments that I have done that and say, how do I not do that again?
Yeah. So for me, if I were to teach a lesson, if I were to deliver a sermon, if you will, on this, it would be on apologizing. Because I think, like, I going into this conversation, like I was talking about how this is the foundation of Zuko's redemption arc. So if I go into this moment thinking this is the foundation of my redemption arc, then I can see a way to repair it. I can see that I have hope that I can repair it. And so I can do the work to make amends. And over time, I am very close with my sister and the people that I have betrayed in my life. Not all of them, but the ones that I have invested time and energy into, I have repaired that relationship. And I don't think that if you are consistently betraying people, you are going to maintain relationship. But I do think that if you make a mistake, there is redemption to be had. And part of that work is apologizing and doing that in a way that is truly making amends and with reparations and not saying but and
no buts.
all of the essential things that make an apology real. Not begging for forgiveness, but acknowledging you did something wrong and making reparations.
Oh, sometimes it's hard to. It is so tough to hear. Like, I'm sorry you feel that way. Like, it was just such a.
Ugh.
Because the reality is, they do feel that way, and whether your actions were intending that or not, that was the result. And so
there's a wonderful book.
I'm sorry you feel that, but
yeah, if you're interested in, if I were to deliver that lesson, I would go reread Why Don't You Apologize, which is by Harriet Lerner. Fabulous book on the elements of the apology. And it's really just an integral piece of growing up. I think everyone should read it. But Harriet Lerner, Why Don't You Apologize? Or Why Won't You Apologize? One of the two. Really excellent. Highly recommend. Time for our devotion, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So balance through the theme of water.
Right.
I went first last time. Are you ready? Can you do this?
Yeah, the moment that really strikes home for me in this is one thing I thought about that actually doesn't correlate with anything, but there's probably deeper meaning if I dove into it, is how hard it is to balance water. Like how hard, I had a mop bucket recently that's like fairly wide, and I went to go pick it up, and all the water shifted to one side and almost all fell out of the bucket, and like how easily water moves from one place to another. That's not going anywhere. I just thought that was an interesting thing of just how difficult it is to balance water, and what does that mean? I don't know. But what I was thinking about in this episode is the moment that Katara uses her healing water to heal Aang and bring balance, a semblance of balance back to him. Not fully balanced, but helps that needle move a little bit for Aang as she restores his health. And I always kind of feel water as this empathy and compassion and love and creating a place of belonging. And so when I think of water in that terms, how do we do that to create healing spaces and to help bring balance of power back to people, to help bring balance of joy and dealing with the emotions that we've talked about? And so how does empathy and compassion and creating safe spaces do all that for others? And so I think for me, my week is going to focus on how do I use those attributes to heal and to help shift the needle back where it needs to be in places where there is an imbalance.
I took it in idea of pH.
Mm-hmm.
So acidity and base and neutral, and thinking about how like acids are lower and then bases are higher on the scale, and I realize that we function better when there is balance. So a lot of times we're eating. I'm taking this in a literal way, I guess, but eating a lot of acidic foods and not eating any bases or alkaline things can harm our bodies. And keeping my body in balance is just as important as keeping my mind and my spirit and my emotions in balance.
Absolutely.
And I want to focus on my body this week. I want to put my body first, and I want to eat some vegetables and make sure that in this quarantine season that I am focusing on not just eating what is available to me, but really nourishing my body to create some balance there.
It's something that we forget about.
Yeah,
how much that actually plays into the way that you feel.
It does.
Getting enough sleep, eating the right foods. The difference between the way you feel when you have fast food 3 days in a row versus fresh ingredients. I've just been doing a lot of cooking, and I vastly feel a difference when I am eating foods that I'm creating with fresh ingredients at home versus not that when I go to Taco Bell, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
But if you want to go to Taco Bell and Taco Bell wants to sponsor us, we'll totally sponsor.
Max is all for it.
He loves a good cheesy gordita crunch.
I'm a fan of that one too.
Yeah, it's fun. But it really is, and we forget about getting enough sleep. We forget about and it's easy to sit there and be like, you need to sleep 8 hours. And I know that there's mental and other things that continue to affect people in a way that's almost impossible. But drinking water and eating the right foods and how big that can be is important.
Huge.
So, well,
yeah.
that's
the
season 2.
Yeah, we
that's
did it.
Season 2.
Yeah.
And we've already started recording season 3, but we've got a few requests of y'all. One,
it's true.
Keep sending us voicemails to thearchive@gmail.com. We genuinely love hearing from you, and we love having you in our episodes.
And we had a few in a while.
We had a bunch in the front part of the season. We would love to have more for season 3.
For real.
2, if you are interested in being on an episode of Bending Not Breaking, we are potentially doing some new stuff next season where we're going to bring more people in to talk about areas that they have an expertise in. And so if you feel like there's something you have a really big expertise in that plays into potentially the lenses that we're utilizing, it could be possible we would love to have you on this show. And so reach out to us again at thearchive@gmail.com and at least start that conversation. We would love to chat with you about it. Next, follow us on BNB_pod on Twitter and on Instagram. There's great extra content there, memes, artwork that we love, quotes from the show, all things that we love putting out there, so please follow us there. And then finally, if you feel so inclined and if you love the show, please tell your friends about it. Please follow us on Spotify, and please rate and review on Apple iTunes. We would greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we're going to try and do our best between seasons 2 and 3. There's going to be a little bit of a break.
Yes.
It's going to be a week, a couple months, like more than a week, several weeks, but potentially a month, potentially 2. We're just feeling it out, and we're going to try and supplement that with some mini episodes, just to keep the itch from being scratched. To scratch the itch.
Yeah.
So just keep on the lookout. Don't now that we're done, don't just take a trip away from your podcast feed.
We're hoping to have season 3 at least started come the end of June, early July. And so we'll continue to work on that on our end. We hope to do that. It could be longer. But yeah, we'll definitely get some mini episodes going. And what a great time to just go back and listen to the old episodes as you are rewatching the series.
Yeah, again
on Netflix.
Right?
So, but please tell your friends about it. And then we owe so much to Max Gongaware for real. He's been able to help us record these episodes and make us sound better and add some fun editing to it. And we really appreciate the work that he's done and love him. So a round of applause that he won't be able to hear because you're doing it in your own setting. But
you better not be driving.
Unless
you can pull over.
Give Max a round of applause.
Yeah. And then you get back on the road.
And if you're listening at like 1.25 speed, you can give him a quicker applause, right? So you can do a 1.25 speed clap back for him. Max, you're like a 1.5 podcast listener, aren't you?
Yes.
I'm 1.3-ish.
No, I listen to it at normal speed.
I don't have that time. I think we sound better and quippier the faster we listen to us. So
interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like we don't have to think as long, It sounds like responses are just right off the bat. So
yeah.
Season 2 in the books. Y'all, thank y'all so much for listening. And
absolutely.
We love doing the show. We're going to keep doing it.
Yep.
And
feel free to check out my other podcast, The Vespers Project. There's still a lot of episodes coming out currently on that feed if you enjoy things like that.
Yep, which is all centered around lenses, but not avatars, just around life, right? So those lenses around life, which is really cool. If you love movies, music, television, go listen to the Arc of E podcast by our host site, thearchive.com. And
especially if you like movies.
Yeah, a lot of movie stuff. A lot of movie stuff on there. So thank y'all so much. I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
I'm Ben Pruitt.
And this has been Season 2 of Bending Not Breaking. We will be back in the near future. Thank y'all for listening.
Bye-bye.